They slapped a 66-year-old man to his knees, not knowing his two sons were sitting 10 feet away. Every town has a clock nobody wound but everybody trusts, and in Ledger Springs, that clock was an old man's Thursday. For 11 straight years, Sam Rourke walked through the same doors at the same hour, ordered the same drink, and left before the second round could tempt him. It wasn't thirst that brought him, it was memory. He'd married Mary right there in town on a Thursday afternoon, decades back, and when she passed, he turned the day into something sacred instead of something sad. One glass, raised in silence, no toast spoken aloud because some words are only for the dead to hear. That kind of discipline tells you everything about a man before he says a single line of dialogue. Meanwhile, two sons who hadn't set foot in Ledger Springs in 5 years were riding back in secret, hats low, coffee only, rehearsing nothing because men who've been gone that long don't know where an apology even starts. Wade carried a reputation ahead of him like a shadow. Folks 2 states over knew the name Red Rourke before they knew his face. Cal carried something rougher, guilt, mostly, for taking 4 extra months to follow his brother out the door. They'd planned this homecoming as a surprise, something warm, something that might undo 5 years of silence in a single afternoon. But you can feel it in the telling, the quiet, the tension in a saloon that used to be loud, the way men glance at strangers and then look away too fast. The reunion they imagined and the town they actually rode into were already 2 different places. It happens fast, the way real humiliation always does, no build-up, no warning, just a shoulder brushing a shoulder and a man's whole dignity crumbling in front of 30 witnesses. Sam wasn't looking for trouble. He was blinking sun out of his eyes, walking toward his one drink like he had 1,000 Thursdays before. Ruel Doss didn't need a reason. Men like that rarely do, they need an audience, and the Bellwether gave him one. The slap that put Sam on his knee wasn't really about the collision at all, it was a message, aimed at the whole room, about who owned the silence in that saloon now. And the silence answered him. 30 people found their boots, their glasses, the dust in the window light, anything that wasn't Sam Rourke bleeding on the floorboards. That's the part that should sit heavy, not the slap, but the quiet that followed it. Then 2 chairs scraped back. Wade and Cal, who'd been sitting in the shadows working up the nerve to say, "Pa, we're home," instead found themselves standing between their father and 4 armed men. Sam did something almost harder than fighting. He put his ruined hands flat on his sons' chests and told them to stand down, not because he was afraid of Doss, but because he already understood something his boys didn't yet, that whoever ran this town wanted exactly this fight to happen. Into that standoff walked Absalom Coulter, calm as Sunday, and turned a saloon brawl into a scheduled appointment. Saturday, noon, in front of everyone. Civilized. Controlled. That's when you know the real threat was never Doss at all. Homecomings are supposed to end at the door. This one kept going, past the porch, into a kitchen with 3 potatoes and a heel of bread standing in for a father's pride. That's the gut punch beat of any good family story, the moment the children realize the parent has been lying to protect them from a truth the parent was too proud to hand over directly. Sam told his sons he'd eaten supper already, at Nora Vance's boarding house, 10 cents a plate, like it was nothing. It wasn't 10 cents. It was 35, and Nora had been quietly covering the difference for months, feeding a proud old man without ever making him feel like charity. Then came the second gut punch, worse than the first. Wade laid out 5 years of paper, 61 receipts, every dollar he and Cal had sent home whenever work allowed it. $10 here, 40 after a bounty, nearly 100 after Cal rode guard on a silver shipment. Every receipt was proof, in Wade's mind, that distance hadn't meant abandonment. Except Sam had never seen a cent of it. Every single receipt bore an X mark credited to Sam, a mark he'd never made in his life, because Sam signed his work with 3 short hammer strokes, not a stranger's scrawl. Somewhere between the express office and the forge, 5 years of a family's love had been quietly stolen, dollar by dollar, while the old man sold his tools and ate charity meals believing his sons had simply stopped sending anything at all. That's not just a plot twist, that's the story's whole wound, right there in plain sight. Just when the sons think the worst news has already landed, the ground shifts again. Nora Vance arrives with stew and biscuits and the kind of information that reframes everything: silver, found back in June, and a man named Coulter who rode into town before the ink on the assay report had even dried. 19 properties changed hands in 11 weeks. Not at gunpoint, not exactly. Coulter was smarter than that. He used a sheriff's warning here, a tired old man's resignation there, and let the town talk itself into surrender one signature at a time. They signed because they were tired, Nora says, and because everybody waited for somebody else to refuse first. That line does the heavy lifting of the whole act. It explains the silence in the saloon, the lowered eyes, the town that used to be loud and now flinches at raised voices. Then the trap springs shut for real. A federal survey team is 3 days out, meaning Coulter needs everything settled, deed signed, dissent silenced, the Rourke family dealt with, before outside eyes arrive. Sheriff Prine, a man who once might have been decent, shows up at the forge with a bogus 1879 debt and a civil writ, arrests Sam for barely nudging a deputy's hand off his own door, and marches him to a jail cell while his sons are away chasing down receipts. It's not a fight anymore. It's a countdown, and the family that came home to reconnect now has to save their father before the clock, and the survey party, runs out. Every good Western eventually stops being about the duel and starts being about the land, and this is the turn where that happens. Behind bars, bleeding, exhausted, Sam finally tells his sons to stop trying to break him out and start listening instead. What he hands them isn't a plan, it's a memory made of iron. A blacksmith who can't write still keeps records, in his case, a 4-foot strip of metal hanging over his workbench, notched and punched for 30 years, more honest than any ledger in the county clerk's office. Those marks prove the 1879 debt Coulter is using to steal the forge was paid off in full back in 1881, the release carried across the street and logged in a red mortgage book with a fire-scorched cover. The man who witnessed it, Edwin Vale, has been dead 3 years, but iron doesn't forget what paper conveniently loses. That alone would be reason enough to fight. But then Sam delivers the real gut punch. Months earlier, shoeing horses for surveyors who thought an illiterate blacksmith couldn't understand what he was overhearing, Sam learned the silver seam runs directly beneath the church lot, and the graveyard behind it. Mary's grave sits almost exactly above it. Red stakes have already appeared around the cemetery. An application has already been filed to relocate the graves, dressed up as a public improvement. Coulter isn't just after buildings and debts anymore. He's after a dead woman's resting place, and the only thing standing between her grave and a mining claim is 2 sons who came home for a reunion and found themselves in a war instead. The chapter ends the way the best serialized stories always do, not with an answer, but with a door left open just wide enough to make you lean forward. While Cal quietly moves the iron tally bar to Nora's boarding house for safekeeping, Wade walks alone to the express office at night, drawn by one last piece of the puzzle: Marlon Teague, the clerk who processed every forged receipt, the man whose new wagon somehow appeared the same spring an old blacksmith's savings vanished. Wade finds him not behind the counter conducting honest business, but packing cash, clothing, and account books into leather cases by lamplight, a man clearly planning to be gone before morning. It's the classic instinct of every guilty party in every good story: run before the reckoning arrives. Wade doesn't draw a gun. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply lays a single receipt on the counter and watches Teague's carefully composed denial start to crack. In that small, quiet moment, no gunfire, no shouting, the story sets its hook for the next chapter. Because whatever Teague knows, whatever ledger or confession is packed into those leather cases, it's the last piece standing between the Rourke family and the truth Coulter has spent months burying. Saturday's duel is still coming. The forge is still seized. Sam is still behind bars. But for the first time since the slap that started it all, the story hands its heroes something more useful than courage: evidence. And evidence, in the hands of the right people, can be more dangerous than any showdown at noon.